Yeah, welcome everybody. I am here with Zachary as the PWAM staffers of this event and as the Quaker College Fair organizer. And I will let the moderators take it away if Tucker and Avery want to introduce yourselves and get us started. Thank you.
I'm Avery. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Guilford class of 2023, Quaker College Fair Series. Can't speak today. This afternoon, we'll be talking about impacts of Karris-Flores from Bryn, Mawr, and Karris-Flores from Penn.
All right. My name is Tucker. I'm the new Young Adult Friends clerk for PYM. We have 3 co-clerks, so I'm one of them. Through this whole video, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat, share your name, where you're calling from, what grade you're in, if you're a student, or if you're a parent, what grade your student is in. We are going to start off with each panelist introducing themselves and just sharing a little bit about their relationship with the panel topic today. And then at the end, we're going to shift into a Q&A. Avery and I are going to moderate questions from the chat with the help of Becca and Zachary. And we're planning to close at 10 with a moment of silence. I believe first we could invite Katarina Karris-Flores, the undergraduate admissions counselor at Bryn, Mawr. So go ahead, Katarina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katarina. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an admissions counselor at Bryn Mawr College. I'm also a recent alum, so I graduated in 2020, so definitely a strange time to graduate. But I'm very excited to chat with all of you today about Bryn Mawr and just about the impacts of virtual learning as well. Should I hand it off to Kerra?
That sounds good to me. Go ahead, Kerra.
Hi, my name is Kerra Strong. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment at Penn University in Oskaloosa, Iowa. I'm happy to be here today. I've been at Penn for almost 17 years in a variety of roles, but being a part of the leadership team during the pandemic in the last couple of years has been very interesting. It's taught us a lot about leadership and involving everyone on campus to problem solve. So excited to have this conversation today with you all and take questions.
All right, so thank you both for joining us today. I can open the conversation now to questions from the audience if you want to share in the chat. If you don't have any questions right now, I think I can start with some of our more frequently asked questions. I know maybe we could start with Katarina. If you want to answer, what are some of the lessons that your school has learned about virtual learning and what are the benefits?
I would say for the undergraduate student body, I think students have learned the importance of being flexible and being able to adapt to change because learning virtually is very difficult because maybe you don't have strong internet connection, maybe an issue happens with your computer, or maybe you aren't sure how to ask a question to your teacher or your professor, I should say, because you don't know them as well because you're learning virtually and you have never met them in person. So I think students have learned to be adaptable and also just to try to figure out what types of resources are available for them in terms of making sure that they're still learning the same amount of material that would be taught a bit differently if it was in person. I would also say the second question was, what are the benefits, would you say, of virtual learning? Yeah. I would say for the benefits of virtual learning, at least for Bryn Mawr, would definitely be being able to learn wherever on campus in terms of let's say you're in your room and you log on to Zoom and you get ready for class. Like, I think that students really like that ability of not being able to travel very far. Not like Bryn Mawr is a very small campus, so not like students have to travel far, but it's nice that students can be like, oh, okay, I can just get out of bed, eat a quick breakfast, and then hop onto Zoom. I also think that for a lot of students, they actually do like virtual learning, which is important for them because then they feel like, oh, I'm really getting something out of my experience, taking classes online. And I think that it's also easier to take notes when you're learning virtually on your computer, or if you have an iPad or a tablet or something like that. I think students like that ability to utilize technology more so than they did when they were learning in person. So I would say those are the main things. It also looks like we have a question in the chat. Do you want me to answer that, or do you want me to give?
I can do that. Yeah, so thank you, Katarina. So we do have a question. Says, have there been some hurdles students have had to overcome once they're in college after having a couple of years of virtual learning, since they've spent half of their high school probably virtually learning? I think actually we could open this up to both of you answering. Kerra, if you want to start.
Sure. I think if anything, students that may have been learning virtually through high school are really excited to be back in the classroom. We've been really fortunate at William Penn to really offer that face-to-face aspect of learning throughout the pandemic. For those that we had on our campus in March of 2020 that could not go home or felt that our campus was safer than some of the metro areas that they were from. So we I think we've positioned ourselves in a way different than some other schools where we've had that face-to-face learning available with that remote option available. But our experience is our kids really love to interact and they like being together, even if it's modified with mask wearing or whatever the case may be. So if anything, I think our students that have come in out of high school with some of that virtual experience behind them are really excited to be with their classmates and be with their faculty members in that face-to-face environment again.
I would also say that some of the hurdles that students at Bryn Mawr at least have overcome, and they're very vocal, I will say, about mental health on campus, which I think is really important, would definitely be learning how to socialize again. I think when you're learning virtually is very easy. And I remember doing this because, when I graduated, I was still learning remotely briefly, but it's very easy to turn off your camera and disengage and not have that same sense of camaraderie that you would in a normal in-person class. And I think students coming from high school or students who have been coming from high school and coming into college have been distant from their high school peers, but also are feeling a sense of social anxiety when it comes to meeting new people and remembering like, oh yeah, this is how I make friends again. So I think that students are overcoming those anxieties. And I think that's good that in a sense that everyone is also going through that too. So it's easy for all the, students in Bryn Mawr's campus, for example, to relate to one another and to be like, oh, I actually also feel really anxious to make new friends, but I'm glad that you feel this way. Like, let's, become friends. I would also say that I think students are overcoming also their fear of asking for help, because I think virtually it is challenging to ask for help, in Zoom when your teacher, is on a roll and is teaching a lesson, and it's difficult to type in the chat and then maybe your teacher doesn't even see that you asked the question. So I think students now are realizing like, okay, yeah, I'm back in person. I can ask for help and feel like I'm being seen. I think that's also an important aspect of that as well.
Okay, I'm going to kind of go off of that question a little bit and just ask, so what kinds of resources have your institutions been offering to help students with that adjustment as, things are opening back up again and people are starting to come back together? I can start with you, Katarina.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with mental health resources. So at Bryn Mawr, students have the ability to take 10 free counseling sessions, which is really great because, that pretty much spans over the entire semester. And students really like that because, there's a therapist that they can talk to on campus and just really open up about different maybe struggles that they're going through, or also the therapist can help them overcome any anxieties that they're facing and talk through those things as well. I'll also mention that at Bryn Mawr, students are very driven to making sure that resources are constantly being improved. And I know that, for example, our writing center, we also have a math tutoring center, and we just have tutoring in general on campus has become so much more expansive and more available for students. I know that they offer now like virtual and in-person sessions throughout the semester, which is really nice because I think it gives students that excitement of being like, oh my gosh, I can ask for help and I can, get tutored and do well at school, which I think is important. I'll also mention too that at Bryn Mawr, and I know that Haverford College does this as well, but they have a lot of student leadership positions where students feel like that can be like an additional resource for them. And also it's nice to talk to a student that relates to you in the same sense that like, oh yeah, I also have social anxiety when it comes to like asking questions now in class or things like that. So I think that the student leadership positions on campus and in the dorms have just become more available and expansive for students. Those are the things that I can think of off the top of my head.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead, Kerra, and answer that as well?
Sure. A lot of our services have expanded just the same. Our on-campus counseling services has expanded their face-to-face offerings, but also offering Zoom sessions as well. And then we did add a kind of a telehealth mental health service that students can access for free. That is a service that has been really well received, and we plan to continue into the future. And then as far as counseling services, primarily it was your face-to-face experience, but those are also now available via Zoom. And a lot of our faculty members have expanded their office hours to be office, but also available via Zoom as well. So if we have students that for whatever reason can't make it physically to that office, they still have a broader access to that faculty instructor as well each semester. So yeah, I think Katarina is right. It's just taking what we've had and just being creative and expanding it further and reaching students and touching students in different ways to meet them where they are.
All right, thank you. And then I don't know if Avery, if you want to share anything about what Guilford's doing to kind of, as they're opening up, help students adjust to that and for their new incoming classes too.
Yeah, definitely. So at Guilford, we always offer free counseling services for students. So that's unlimited number of sessions. We have counseling on campus that you can go to, which is really great, always super helpful. And then we also have an accessibility resource center that works with students to do if they need any accessibility needs. And we also have a learning writing center that you can get unlimited free tutoring at, and they can help you with like writing essays. And we have a ton of resources that also offer like virtual assistance if you need that, if you don't want to be in person. And so we can do virtual counseling sessions, you can do virtual tutoring sessions. We have a ton of different options for those. So that's super helpful. And I know like for me as a student, that's been super helpful. Like if I've needed help with like class, or if I've been struggling with something like emotionally or mentally, they always have options for that. So it's super helpful at Guilford.
So just so we kind of know where everybody is, I know you're all located in different places across the country. What are the current COVID protocols on campus? Do you want to start, Kerra?
Sure. Things are in Iowa pretty much, I don't want to say normal quite yet, but we are definitely getting there in terms of our numbers. We have offered on-campus COVID testing since nearly the very beginning. And so that is still available on campus Monday through Friday. If students aren't feeling well, or if they have been notified they've been exposed, we offer free testing for them. We still have available isolation units and quarantine units for students that are living on campus that may either test positive or be deemed a contact if they're not vaccinated. So, and we offer, meal delivery, mail delivery, all those things to those students that might find themselves in that situation. But knock on wood, we haven't had a positive case on campus since spring break. So we we're feeling pretty good right now, but as we know, COVID can change on a dime. So all of our processes are in place and ready as soon as we need to implement them. But like I said before, all of our students are back in class face to face. We do not require masks if the student is feeling well and has not tested positive within the last 5 days.
So for Bryn Mawr, everyone who, even faculty and staff members, in addition to students, to come back to campus and be in person, you have to be vaccinated with both of the doses, and you have to have the booster shot. And I think this just serves as a good barrier to COVID really running rampant on campus, and that's the same with Haverford's campus. So Bryn Mawr is located about 30 minutes away from the city of Philadelphia, and in addition, students are required to wear masks indoors when it comes to being in classrooms. You can take your mask off outside. I know that now our dining halls are opening up a little bit more for students to sit inside, which is really great. And we do offer testing that's, throughout the week, and students can, contact their academic advisor, or they can also just go to the health center and, get a COVID test. And we do have isolation spaces on campus, but I think because everyone has to be vaccinated to come back, I think that they have reserved the isolation spaces more for severe cases of COVID, but it's been recommended that students, just stay in their dorm and self-isolate for about 5 days or so, or, until they feel better, and then until they have a negative COVID test as well.
Do you want to update us, Avery, on just where Guilford's at with COVID policies right now?
Yeah, definitely. So we are also requiring all 3 doses of the vaccines on campus. I believe we're at a 95% vaccination rate for the entire campus, including staff and faculty. So we have a few medical and religious exemptions that have been offered. We are no longer requiring masks in residence halls, classrooms, any of that. That recently got lifted about 2 weeks ago. Professors can still require it in their individual classrooms, which a lot of them are. We have weekly testing. So if you are unvaccinated, if you were given an exemption, you have to be tested every week. And then if you are vaccinated, you are required to be tested every 3 weeks. So we all have to be routinely tested, and we are keeping rates pretty low. I don't think we've had a positive case in the last few weeks. So we're doing pretty good. And we're doing self-isolation. So you isolate in your own dorm now if you're vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, you have to go into a separate isolation dorm. But if you are vaccinated, you just self-isolate for a few days. But so far we're doing pretty good. We've been pretty strict about it, and we're slowly opening up campus again. We've been slowly having more events. Like this past week was our spring festival, Serendipity. So that's been really nice that we've been able to do more things on campus while still keeping our rates really low. So far, so good at Guilford, and we're feeling pretty optimistic over here.
All right, thank you. So looking at, I know this was a while ago, but the campus pre-pandemic, before 2020 and everything hit, what do you think the biggest differences are between then and now? We can start with you, Katarina.
I would say, and since I was a student too, I really remember the way life was before COVID. I think all of us do, but especially in college, I would say the main difference is just the sense of community. So Bryn Mawr is a undergraduate institution of 1,400 undergraduate students. So the community is very tight knit, and all of our activities revolve around the tight knit nature of our community, and we have traditions. We have a lot of activities where everyone can come together and everyone just knows each other in general. But what I've been told from tour guides and just observing the campus dynamics is that a lot of students have missed out on the traditions or the different aspects of our community that make us unique. And I think that's just really tough, because they also find then that maybe Bryn Mawr, or they think that, you know, Bryn Mawr might not be the right institution or fit for them. But I think it's just a matter of COVID preventing like the different community events from happening that makes it really difficult for students, I think, to find a sense of belonging on campus. I would also say that just general campus livelihood is a lot different. A lot of our events are held outside, so it tends to feel a bit more spread out, whereas like if it was inside, students would be more interactive with one another. But I think now, because our COVID policies are changing a little bit, I know the president released a statement, I think yesterday, regarding like big campus events. She mentioned that students don't have to wear masks inside if there's a big campus event, which is exciting. I think that will help students feel more at home when it comes to being at Bryn Mawr. But I would just say general campus camaraderie is just very different.
Thank you. If you could also answer that, Kerra, just changes from before the pandemic and now.
Sure. I think one of the big things that we've taken away is just upping our level of communication as an institution to our students and other community constituents. We thought we were doing a good job, but then once the pandemic hit, and there's so many questions and so many unknowns, we really knew that we needed to fill that void with, even if it was just a quick, how are you doing? Let us know if you need anything. We're not really sure what to do next, but we're working on it and we will get back to you. So our level of communication on all issues, not just COVID, but all community type issues and updates, we're definitely providing to students on a more regular basis, which I think is important. And then to your point, Katarina, just about the community involvement and students wanting to be together, you know, our toughest semester really was our fall of 20, because we were on campus, but we had a lot of students that elected to learn remote that semester. So it didn't feel nearly as full as what we're used to. We had to limit access to sporting events, limit access to campus events. And so the students that were here during that time, I think, really appreciate being able to be more back to normal now. You know, it's one of those things, you don't know how much you love something till it's gone, and how much you might take for granted until you can't have it anymore. And so I've sensed, especially in those students that are currently juniors, have kind of seen all of it progress, are so appreciative and really kind of relishing the experience, maybe more so than they would have otherwise. So I think it's always nice to come away with a grateful heart. And I think the pandemic and the campus experience is definitely, we've come out on the other side feeling that gratefulness.
All right, thank you. So I know the pandemic has been very polarizing for many people. Do you see that like the pandemic has influenced the political personality of the student body at all? And how did the university like handle those kinds of, you know, differences and conflicts during the pandemic? I'll start with you, Kerra.
Yeah, I'll start. You know, I think one of the great things that we've learned about our students is they're exceptional. You know, it was such a huge challenge, and so many outside voices, you know, not necessarily our community, but on the national news, and so many polarizing ideas. And our students really just rallied around the idea of, let's take care of our community. You know, let's make decisions and let's do things that fit for us. And taking all of those national guidelines and all of those things into consideration, but knowing that, you know, what's happening in a small town in Iowa might be different than what's happening in New York City. And so being able to really have those conversations with our students were important. And then understanding that, you know, we are a community and our job is to help keep each other safe. And our students really took that to heart, and we did everything we absolutely could to make sure we were keeping each other healthy and safe. And we wore masks for a long time, and students really did not have any issue with that because they saw the greater good. We were able to explain, the benefits of that. We did not require vaccines on campus, but a lot of our students elected to do that. So that was a positive. And, I think at the end of the day, because they were included, we talked to them about some of these things and they felt included in the process. There was a lot of support for decisions that had to be made relative to COVID and COVID protocols. So yeah, we were able to all really, even though we might not have all believed the same thing and how we should handle things, we were all able to get on the same page and just move forward together, which I think is an important part of life, not only in college, but when you get out and get a job and have a family and work in community settings. Not everybody's always going to agree, but you have to find a way to work together and keep moving forward. So I think we did a good job of accomplishing that.
For Bryn Mawr, I would say that I don't think the political climate changed on campus. So Bryn Mawr in general is just a very liberal leaning campus. And I agree with Kerra that the community, I think, also got closer together because they realized, like, in order to stay on campus, we have to wear a mask all the time and we have to follow the guidelines and make sure that, like, other community members are doing the same thing, because they did not, the students did not enjoy learning, virtually, and they wanted to really have that experience of being back in person with each other again and have somewhat of a normal college experience. And I would say that students were very dedicated to wearing their masks everywhere they go and being very aware of their actions and how it might impact the community. And I think that's something that Bryn Mawr really followed through with, and I know that Haverford did that as well. So I think that's important that the student body really looked out for each other.
One thing that I would add that kind of demonstrates what I'm kind of talking about, that first year, so fall of 20 and spring of 21, we had a required daily health screening that students and employees had to complete before they were allowed to have access to buildings. So it was a set of questions, do you have a fever? And they had to record their temperature every day. Like, it was a lot that they had to do. And so we actually pulled back and did not require that for fall of 21. But we have, and ever since, we have had so many students self-report symptoms and request testing. And I think that goes back to, they want to make sure that they're keeping the community safe. And so if they don't feel quite right, they want to make sure that they're not carrying something that could be harmful to somebody else. So I would say that is kind of indicative of, having that responsibility towards others that our students are demonstrating, even when we're not directly asked them to do that, they're raising their hand and saying, I just test me because I want to make sure. And we all know COVID tests aren't the most pleasant thing to do. So the fact that they're asking for it, I think, is a really positive sign about community responsibility.
Thank you. What about you, Avery? Have you seen that kind of political issue on campus, and how has that conflict been resolved?
I don't think there's been a ton of political issues, in all honesty. We've been testing. We've had, like, last semester, we had optional testing all the time, and there hasn't been a ton of pushback about being tested. All, like, vaccinated people have to be tested every 3 weeks, like I was saying. So, like, next week is a mandatory testing week for everybody. So, I mean, everybody, of course, like, complains a little bit because getting COVID tested is not fun, like Kerra was saying. But we all still do it. And I think, like everybody else was saying, it's a big, like, community that we're focusing on, because we are such a small campus. Like, just a couple of people will send us into a lockdown. So when there's only 600 people living on campus, it's very easy to spread very quickly. So I think a lot of people are just doing a lot of community care and making sure that we're taking care of each other and understanding that this is for the greater good, even if, like, 30 seconds of discomfort has to come for it. So I think there's a lot of just community coming together, and there hasn't been a ton of pushback in all honesty, which has been really nice.
All right, thank you. So what tools do your institutions provide for graduates now who are entering the professional world at this time? You know, with things opening and some places still COVID. How do your universities prepare graduates for that? I'll start with Katarina.
So I will say, because I graduated in 2020, I didn't feel like, well, obviously no one was prepared for the pandemic, no one was. But I felt like because we graduated and we didn't receive like closure in terms of a graduation ceremony, I feel like when we left, the I guess like resources that are normally given to alumni weren't as present, because they were still trying to figure out like what can we do for the class of 2020, because from what I've been told that the class of 2020 will have similar experiences to like the class of 2008 who graduated during the recession and struggled to find jobs after campus and things like that. So but I will say, like, it took some time, I think, for Bryn Mawr to develop those resources for alumni. But now, like, I receive emails like all the time about like come to this like virtual alumni event, or come and do this, like chat with our career and civic engagement center. So it's nice that now students are being able to, or students are being, not students, alumni, I should say, are being contacted and providing those resources for recent alums, which is good. But I think at first, because I graduated in 2020, where everyone was still trying to adapt to all of the changes in the lockdown that we were going through, I think it was very hard for the alumni association at Bryn Mawr to provide resources for them. But I'm not like, I wasn't mad at them for not like emailing me as soon as I graduated or anything like that. I just think it was more of a matter of like, okay, we have to adapt and figure out like how we can support the class of 2020, who is going to have, as like I said, a similar experience to the class of 2008, where they are graduating in a historic event in, you know, the history of the United States, and figure out like what do they need to be supported. And I will say, like, it's nice now to get that support, but I looked more for support from my friends and my family, and I wasn't super focused on the alumni association. But it's nice that they are making an effort now and really like targeting us and asking how we can help, or how they can help us.
Thank you. And do you have anything you'd like to add, Kerra?
Our career services office has been available to students throughout the pandemic, on campus as well as Zoom or other virtual options. We did have our very first face-to-face job fair where outside employers came in this semester. So it's been a few years since we've been able to do that. So that was, again, a welcome activity. A lot of our students took advantage of that, but also, you know, seeking out those opportunities for those virtual career and job fairs too. So our students have different ways to get in front of potential employers before they graduate. Those types of options have been available as well. And then similarly, our advancement office and alumni offices, they're just now really starting to get back on the road and have those face-to-face type of events for alumni that are spread all over the country. So like Katarina said, it's been a little slower, you know, because it's one thing to kind of open things up on your own campus, but then when you talk about traveling outside of your little bubble, you know, it's a little bit more difficult to get those things back to where they were pre-pandemic. So those things are starting to slowly come back online, which is great. I think people appreciate them, especially our alumni that scatter so far out after graduation to check back in with us and see what resources are available to them as alumni.
All right, thank you. And this last question here, how has your community's like Quaker values prepared the institution to navigate, you know, crises and historic events like the pandemic that we've seen? And who knows what the next 4 years will bring. If you want to start, Kerra.
So two things that we talk about a lot it's in our mission statement, are the ideals of simplicity, peacemaking, integrity, community, and equality. And I feel like we used those really intentionally throughout the pandemic, even more so than what is in our normal operations of the university. So again, it was such a complicated time. So sending out messaging to students that was very simple about what our expectations were and what our policies were, and not just page on page on page of policy that they'd have to try to understand before they came back to campus. In the community, trying to build community even when we weren't able to all gather together like we were so used to, taking alternative routes to still build more small group communities rather than large campus events, still build community within the classroom, even if it might be virtual, connecting students that may have been in isolation or quarantine, still connecting them to the kids that were in the physical classroom through the technology that we added to all of our classrooms. And then equality, making sure that all of our students, no matter where they were, had the ability and the resources to connect and still receive a quality education. So we really leaned on those 5 principles that are part of our mission statement really hard throughout the pandemic. And there were several things that we implemented during the pandemic that will continue on, just because it provided so much value and were important to the student success. And even if there's not a pandemic, students will always have issues that come up in their life that in normal years pre-pandemic, they would have had to have withdrawn from school if they would have to go back home for a surgery or a family emergency or something like that. But the fact that we've been able to add those remote options allow them to continue on their studies without that typical withdrawal path. So that's been a huge learning lesson and a huge advantage to students that we're going to continue post-pandemic.
For Bryn Mawr, I would say the honor code really played a strong role in influencing how students were approaching living on campus during the pandemic. So at Bryn Mawr, we have a campus honor code, a social and an academic honor code, but essentially the honor code just really emphasizes integrity and mutual respect between students. And I will say that I think the honor code also emphasizes like you can put up boundaries, but also like you should respect people's boundaries. And I think that really played a strong role in how students, were wearing masks, and also how students were making sure that they weren't prying into people's business about like, where were you? Like, I heard that you were exposed to COVID, and like not letting it consume them, which I think is important because word travels very fast on small college campuses. So it's easy, I think, to maybe ostracize some people sometimes, to be like, I heard you went to a party and you were exposing us and blah blah blah. But I think the honor code really showed students that we need to respect each other's boundaries and not pry in people's business, but also we need to respect the community guidelines around COVID and make sure that students are abiding by the guidelines and not putting the community in jeopardy. And I think that's something that's just really important to Bryn Mawr as a liberal arts college, but also a college that has Quaker roots. And I think it just showed students that it's important, to care for one another and to respect the decisions that everyone makes.
Thank you. Avery, do you want to add anything about, the Quaker values at Guilford and how that's affected the pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. So I think our Quaker values have helped us a lot and have helped us like stay very tight knit as a community, even through this like time of separation. I think a big thing has been just being able to have like that sense of equality between like students and professors. So since like at Guilford, we do refer to all of our professors and everyone on campus by their first names. There's a very tight knit community because of that, and it's created just a very like I say easy way to talk to your professors. And we have very small class sizes, So it's very easy to get to know your professors. And so that has helped us a lot. So you can go like ask your professor, tell them what's going on in your life. And they're very flexible and very receptive to anything that's like going on for you. So that's been really, really helpful. And we've also just upheld those community values a lot. And that's helped us take care of each other. You report when you have symptoms, you go get tested, and like you understand that maybe this isn't like for you for that moment. You're helping somebody else. And I think that's helped us a lot.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else that you think we should know about what's going on with your institution and what has been done during the pandemic before we close out? I'll start with you, Katarina.
I'm trying to think. I feel like I covered a lot of it because I tend to talk a lot. I'm not really sure, but I think something important to just still mention is that like for incoming students and admitted students, it is required to be vaccinated to be back on campus, to develop herd immunity and just to really take care of each other. At least in the Bryn Mawr community, I know that other colleges are doing different things, but that's just something that we adopted and that Haverford College has adopted as well. So I think that's pretty much it, but I appreciate you asking.
Sure. Kerra, anything else you wanted to add?
I think we've covered it. I appreciate being included today.
Great. And Avery, anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. No, I think everyone at Guilford is really excited for the next chapter, and we're excited to see what's going to happen next.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. If we would like, we can close with a moment of silence. Thank you.